In the heart of an ancient African village, nestled between towering trees and winding rivers, lived Anansi, the clever Spider-Man. Known for his quick wit and silver tongue, Anansi was both admired and feared. His tricks often brought laughter, but sometimes they carried consequences. One evening, as the villagers gathered around the fire, an elder, Nana Bosom, spoke of a powerful treasure hidden deep within the sacred cave. This treasure, it was said, granted wisdom beyond measure to those worthy of it, but only the pure of heart could possess it. Anansi, intrigued and greedy for its power, saw an opportunity. He didn't desire wisdom for its virtue. He wanted it for control. However, he knew he couldn't simply take it. He needed a plan, one woven from deception and trickery. As the moon cast long shadows over the village, Anansi sat atop his web, plotting. He would weave a tale so convincing, so irresistible, that none would suspect his true intentions. Little did he know, the web he spun would soon entangle him in ways he never imagined. Anansi's deceptive plan. Anansi could not stop thinking about the treasure. The idea of possessing wisdom beyond measure excited him, not to guide others but to outsmart them, to be the greatest trickster of all time. However, he knew Nana Bosom was no fool. The elder had lived long and seen through many deceitful schemes before. If Anansi wanted to claim the treasure, he had to be more cunning than ever. So he devised a plan. Not only would he deceive Nana Bosom, but he would also manipulate others into helping him. Why take all the risk when he could have unwitting accomplices do his bidding? He needed a distraction, a way to make Nana leave the treasure unguarded, even for a short while. That evening, as the village animals gathered by the river, Anansi climbed onto a high branch and addressed them with a voice filled with urgency. "My dear friends," he called, "a great misfortune has befallen our land. Nana Bosom holds a secret treasure, one that grants wisdom and power beyond measure. But she hoards it for herself. If we share in this treasure, we could all become wiser, stronger, and more prosperous." The animals murmured in confusion. They respected Nana Bosom, but Anansi's words stirred curiosity. Turtle, slow and thoughtful, narrowed his eyes. "If this treasure is so powerful," he asked, "why has Nana not used it to rule over us?" Anansi chuckled, weaving his web of lies with precision. "Because she fears competition. Imagine, Turtle, you could move as swiftly as the wind. Monkey, you could outthink even the cleverest hunter. And Hyena, you could command respect instead of being laughed at. This treasure is meant for us all." The animals exchanged glances, and Anansi knew he had them hooked. "But we must be careful," he continued. "If Nana learns of our intentions, she will hide the treasure away forever. We must work together." Each animal had a role. Monkey, quick and mischievous, would create chaos in the village, forcing Nana Bosom to leave her post. Turtle, slow but wise, would pretend to be sick, demanding Nana's attention. Hyena, ever hungry, would steal food from the village stores to further the confusion. Meanwhile, Anansi would slip into the sacred cave and claim the treasure. The animals, eager to believe in their newfound destiny, agreed. They trusted Anansi's words, not realizing that he had no intention of sharing the treasure with them. That night, as the village slept, Anansi perched in his web, watching the stars. His plan was in motion, and if everything went as he intended, by dawn, he would hold the power of wisdom in his grasp. But even the cleverest tricksters sometimes forget. When you weave a web of deceit, you may end up tangled in it yourself. The execution of the plan. With the plan in motion, Anansi felt a rush of excitement. The night would unfold just as he had envisioned. The village was quiet, the only sounds being the rustling of the leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Anansi crept into position, watching as his unwitting allies prepared to do their part. Step 1. Distracting Nana Bosom. At the heart of the village, Nana Bosom sat under a large baobab tree, calmly weaving a basket by the firelight. She was a woman of deep wisdom, and her presence had always been a stabilizing force for the village. Her keen eyes missed little, but Anansi counted on his distractions to pull her attention away. First, Monkey, quick and agile, began his mischief. He knocked over the village's cooking pots, sending them clattering across the ground. The noise was enough to stir the villagers, but Monkey wasn't done. He dashed into the center of the village, where he began pretending to be possessed, running around in circles, howling loudly. Nana Bosom stood up, her brow furrowed with concern, but before she could act, Turtle, pretending to be gravely ill, stumbled into the clearing. He groaned and collapsed to the ground. "Nana, help! I have been struck with an illness from the spirits," Turtle moaned, clutching his stomach. Nana rushed to his side, her face filled with worry. The villagers gathered around, and in that moment, the sacred cave, where the treasure lay hidden, was left unguarded. Anansi's heart raced. This was his chance. Step 2. The theft. With swift and quiet movements, Anansi slipped into the shadows, careful not to draw attention. He had planned every detail of this heist, down to the smallest noise. The cave was a sacred space, hidden deep within the jungle, guarded by the whispers of ancestors. Yet, Anansi knew that even the spirits had their weaknesses. Greed, he knew, could blind even the most vigilant of guardians. As he approached the entrance, he paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the situation. The treasure was not just an object, it was the key to unimaginable power. But what if Nana Bosom had truly been guarding it for the good of the village? Anansi shook off the thought. He couldn't afford to hesitate now. Inside the cave, the air was thick with ancient energy. In the center of the chamber sat the treasure, a gleaming orb, pulsating with a soft, ethereal light. It radiated an aura of wisdom and strength, and Anansi could feel its power calling to him. His eyes gleamed with greed as he reached out and seized the orb. As soon as his fingers touched it, he felt a surge of energy, a rush of clarity that flooded his mind. He could feel the wisdom of centuries within his grasp, but it was not the wisdom he craved. It was the power to control, to manipulate. As he turned to leave, a flicker of doubt passed through his mind. Was he truly ready for such power? But the thought was fleeting. He had already crossed the line, and there was no going back. Step 3. The betrayal. Anansi knew that the moment he left the cave, the treasure would be his, and his plan would be complete. But before he could slip away, he heard voices approaching. The animals, monkey, turtle, and hyena, had all been part of the plot, believing they would share in the treasure's power. Anansi hesitated for only a moment. He had no intention of sharing the treasure with anyone, especially not those who had helped him. He had used them, and now he would discard them. With a quick decision, Anansi spun a new web of deceit. "Ah, my dear friends," he called out to the approaching animals. "The treasure is mine now, as I promised, but it is too great for all of us to share. You have each played your part, and I will reward you with what you deserve." The animals stood, stunned. "What do you mean, Anansi?" Turtle asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "I mean," Anansi said with a sly grin, "that you have all helped me, but it is I alone who am worthy of the treasure. You will receive nothing. Now go back to the village, and I will enjoy the power I have earned." With that, Anansi disappeared into the jungle, leaving the animals confused and betrayed. The treasure was his, and soon he would be the ruler of the village, the wisest and most powerful creature to ever live. But the joy of success was short-lived. Anansi had made a dangerous mistake. He had underestimated Nana Bosom, and he had failed to account for the price of his deception. The consequences of deception. Anansi's heart raced as he hurried through the jungle, clutching the treasure tightly. His plans had worked. He was the possessor of unimaginable power. But the rush of victory began to fade, replaced by an uncomfortable weight. A deep, rumbling voice called out from the darkness, "Anansi!" It was Nana Bosom. The weight of his betrayal crashed over him. He had underestimated the elder's wisdom, and the spirits of the village had already been alerted to his theft. Anansi had thought himself clever, but now he realized how wrong he had been. Nana Bosom, standing with the villagers, spoke calmly but firmly. "Anansi, You cannot steal what was never meant to be taken. Return what you've stolen or face the consequences. Anansi froze. His web of deceit was unraveling, and there was no easy escape. The animals he had deceived, monkey, turtle, and hyena, emerged from the shadows, their eyes full of anger. Anansi had betrayed their trust, and now they would hold him accountable. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, Anansi called out to the animals. "I alone am worthy of this treasure," he said. But the animals saw through his lies. They stood their ground, demanding justice. Just as Anansi thought he might escape, Nana Bosom and the spirits of the ancestors arrived. "The spirits are watching," Nana Bosom said. "Your actions cannot go unpunished. The path to wisdom is not through deceit, but integrity." Anansi's deceit had caught up with him, and he had no choice but to face the consequences. The trickster tricked. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Anansi stood before the village, his head bowed in shame, the treasure once coveted now resting in Nana Bosom's hands. The weight of his actions bore down on him, and he realized that no amount of trickery could undo the harm he had caused. But Nana Bosom's eyes were not full of anger. Instead, there was something else, something much deeper. It was wisdom, the kind that only comes with age and experience, the kind that Anansi had longed for, but had never truly understood. "Anansi," Nana Bosom said, her voice both gentle and firm. "The path you've chosen may have seemed like the quickest route to power, but it has only led you to a dead end. Wisdom is not something to be stolen, it is something to be earned." Anansi wanted to protest, to explain that he had only wanted to be the greatest, greater than all the animals and even the elders, but the words caught in his throat. He knew that no matter what he said, his actions had already spoken louder than any excuse he could offer. As the villagers gathered around, Anansi felt the weight of their gazes upon him. Turtle, monkey, and hyena stood together, watching him with a mixture of disappointment and caution. They had once believed in him, trusted him. Now they saw him for what he truly was, a deceiver, a trickster who had forgotten the true meaning of his role in the world. "The spirits of the ancestors have already spoken," Nana Bosom continued, raising the treasure high in her hands. "Anansi has learned a hard lesson, but he is not beyond redemption. We will forgive him, but he must earn our trust once more." Anansi's heart lifted at her words, but he knew that forgiveness would not come easily. He had much to atone for, and it would take more than just returning the treasure to earn back the respect of those he had wronged. With a deep breath, Anansi spoke, his voice low but sincere. "I have deceived you all. I sought power for the wrong reasons, and in doing so, I hurt those I cared about. I ask for your forgiveness, and I will do whatever it takes to make things right." There was a long pause before Monkey stepped forward, his eyes narrowed, but not without some measure of understanding. "You tricked us, Anansi," Monkey said, his voice sharp. "But we're not so easily fooled anymore. You'll have to prove yourself, not just to us, but to everyone." Turtle nodded in agreement. "The road to redemption is long, Anansi, but it is not impossible. If you truly seek wisdom, you must be patient and humble. You cannot rush what must be earned." Anansi nodded, feeling the weight of their words sink in. He had spent so long trying to outwit others, to control them with his webs, but now he understood that true wisdom was about more than trickery. It was about honesty, patience, and earning the respect of those around you, not through manipulation, but through integrity. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Anansi made his way to the center of the village. He had not expected to feel such humility, but now, as he faced the villagers, he understood that he was not above them. He was just one among many, and it was time to start learning the lessons he had avoided for so long. "I will stay," Anansi said, his voice resolute. "I will learn from you, and I will prove that I am more than just a trickster. I will earn your trust, step by step." Nana Bosom smiled softly, her eyes full of wisdom. "You are beginning to understand, Anansi. Remember, the greatest strength lies not in deception but in truth. The web of deceit you once spun is tangled now, but it can be untangled with patience and humility. Anansi bowed his head once more, the journey ahead clear in his mind. He had learned a hard lesson, but it was a lesson he would never forget. He had always believed that the web of life was something to be controlled, but now he knew that it was something to be understood, something to be respected. As the villagers gathered around him, Anansi took his first steps toward redemption, not with the arrogance of the trickster, but with the humility of someone who had learned the true value of wisdom. The road ahead would be long, but it was a road he was now ready to walk. The fate of Anansi. Anansi's story would go down in legend, not as a tale of trickery and deceit, but as a story of growth, redemption, and the search for true wisdom. It would be told for generations, not just as a warning, but as a reminder that even the greatest trickster could learn the value of honesty and integrity. Though Anansi's web had once been spun with lies, it was now being rewoven with the threads of truth. He would never be the same trickster who had sought power for selfish gain. Instead, he would be the Spider-Man who had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that wisdom cannot be taken, it must be earned. And while Anansi had been humbled, the sparkle in his eyes never fully faded. After all, he was still Anansi, the trickster. He would still be clever, still be resourceful. But now, he knew that his greatest strength lay not in deceiving others, but in understanding the web of life and respecting the delicate balance of truth and wisdom. As he looked out over the village, he could see the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees. The day was new, and so was Anansi. The journey ahead would be difficult, but it was one he was no longer afraid to take. And who knows, perhaps in time the world would come to see him not as a deceiver, but as a wiser, kinder trickster, one who had learned that sometimes the greatest tricks of all are the ones played with the truth.